Hi, and welcome to the Ambition video series. Today we'll be talking about Ambition scorecards. To edit scorecards, you have to be an Ambition administrator. To access scorecards, you can click on the left administration menu, scroll down to scorecards. In Ambition, scorecards are the tool that helps connect your metrics to your employees' activity and objective scores. Your activity score is meant to be a daily, weekly, or monthly score of the activities that your contributors do. These should include things that they're directly able to influence, such as the number of calls they make, the number of emails they send, or any other activity that can be directly influenced. Objective scores are measured weekly, monthly, or quarterly and should be in alignment with the value your contributors deliver back to your business. Very often, objective scores are highly in line with individuals' compensation plans or variable compensation targets. At the top of the scorecard menu, you'll notice the Role drop-down selector. In your organizational settings, you will have defined one group type. Role is the default setting for which to build scorecards. To prevent confusion, scorecards can only be built for one group type, although you can change that group type in your organizational settings if needed. This dropdown enumerates the roles that you currently have built for your organization. In this sample environment, you'll see we have new hires, business development reps, senior business development reps, account executives, and senior account executives. We'll pick account executives to view the scorecard currently set for account executives. The time frame for both activity and objective score can be set to daily, weekly, and monthly for activity score, and weekly, monthly, and quarterly for objective score. These settings must be the same for your entire organization and therefore are also defined in the organizational settings. You can't change these timeframes for one role without changing it for all roles. For both your activity and your objective score, you'll see the metrics associated with each, as well as the benchmark and the weight. Using the Add Metric button, you can choose from the existing metrics you have built out in Ambition's metric library. If we add a new metric, such as calls, we can then set a benchmark. We'll pick 50, and a weight or an importance for this metric. In this example, we're going to weight calls at a 15% importance, which we then have to remove from another metric. All your importance totals must add up to 100, resulting in a balanced importance total. Benchmarks are the threshold of behavior or threshold of activity required to meet a 100% activity score within the time frame defined. Our current objective scorecard requires 2 closed-won opportunities per month, 8 new opportunities created per month, and 15,000 in revenue per month. It's important to keep in mind the time frame as your benchmarks will adjust based on your business's requirement level. To the right of the benchmark, you'll notice the auto benchmark feature. The auto benchmark feature uses historical data to return a reasonable benchmark based on the information available to Ambition. If I click auto benchmark, you'll notice Ambition has returned a value of 3 for appointments held. I can then use this historical data to understand, based on my past 30 days of performance data, what is a realistic benchmark. The Smart Benchmarking feature allows me to create tiered benchmark schedules and customized benchmark plans for particular contributors. To adjust your Smart Benchmarks, click the Smart Benchmark button, which takes you to the Benchmark Calendar menu. From here, validate that the role you've selected is the appropriate role. Decide whether you need to adjust a benchmark within the activity or the objective score, and then select the metric in question from the dropdown. Once you've done this, you'll see in spreadsheet view your time frame, your contributors, and the benchmarks for this metric. Within this benchmarking calendar, you can make changes that apply to one or many of your contributors. If Diego is a new contributor for which a benchmark of $15,000 per month is unrealistic, I can adjust his benchmark here in the Smart Benchmarking Calendar. Adjusting this benchmark to $5,000 in his first month cascades that value across time. I'll then raise that amount to $10,000 in his second month, and then finally up to the total of $15,000 in his third month. Activity and objective scores are meant to be a measure of how somebody is performing against expectation. If Diego truly isn't expected to produce $15,000 in revenue his first month, then his scorecard should reflect that. Using smart benchmarking, you can set expectations appropriately for the different individuals in your organization. If Jared is a top contributor who regularly delivers more than $15,000 per month, I can adjust Jared's benchmark without having to create a whole new role. I'll adjust Jared's benchmark to $25,000. You'll notice that this benchmark has now been cascaded across time for Jared while not impacting the remainder of my employees. If you have a particular business event that impacts all of your contributors, you can also reflect that by selecting and editing the benchmark for a particular time frame. If I had an annual planning event in September, which I knew would impact all my contributors, I could change the benchmark for September to reflect that. Just remember to adjust the following period back to your norm. While trying to decide what are the appropriate weights and benchmarks for your scorecards, it's helpful to view analytics. Analytics shows a histogram of activity or objective scores on our scale of 0 to 100, as well as where your current contributors would fall today based on their metric values. Based on this scorecard of 4 appointments held and 140 activities at a 60-40 weighting, this histogram shows that most of my users would fall between a 10 and a 50 activity score. This is relatively low, and I might want to consider relaxing these benchmarks to create a more attainable target. For my objective score, I can see that this scorecard would result in all users having over a 100% objective score. I may need to raise my benchmarks here to result in a more balanced distributed scorecard where my users are scoring closer to the 70s and 80s rather than all exceeding their 100% target. As a final note, when clicking Save, you'll be prompted to type I understand once for changing the activity scores and once for changing the objective scores. It's important to understand that changes that you make only impact the current period as well as any future periods. In this case, that means my activity scores will be recomputed for today as well as any day in the future, and my objective scores would be recomputed for this month as well as any future months. Previous performance against previous activity and objective scores will remain the same and will not be recomputed based on this new scorecard definition. Thanks for watching today's video on Ambition Scorecards. If you have any questions that weren't answered in this video, please leave us a comment at gethelp@ambition.com. Thanks.